Welcome to OutKick Live. I'm Ryan Glasspiegel. We're joined today by Big E of WWE Smackdown, and your incredible 6-year run of the New Day just came to an end in the last couple weeks. Can you kind of go through what your reflections on that era were?
Yeah, it was definitely for us. It was filled with a lot of ups and downs. Most of the downs were at the beginning for sure. But I think what I'll always think of is I think so often in pro wrestling, it's so difficult to have a comeback story like we did. Usually, you see a group like us in 2014. The way we came out, the way we were received, and I'd say, man, it seems like we'd be dead in the water. The fact that we lasted 6 years is a minor miracle, honestly, because those early days were rough. And with as much success as we've had as a group, I always think back to the origins, to the beginning of how difficult it was, and that's why I'm so grateful for this run. But I think that it's never my place to put us in the ranks of the greatest factions ever. I'll let people decide what they want to do with that. But the fact that we're even at the point where that's even in the conversation, that we were able to do something unique, I can't recall any other faction that was able to break up, to split the way we were. And that's something that meant a lot to us, that we always wanted to portray this very real sense of brotherhood, of three guys who genuinely wanted the best for each other. And you'd never had the betrayals, the hitting each other with a chair, the backstabbing, that we got to do something unique. And we got to be ourselves. We got to do a lot of things that I'd never seen in WWE. And for that, I'm really grateful. From hosting WrestleMania, something we never thought we'd be able to do, to having promo segments with The Rock, to having this incredible, epic rivalry with the Usos, and a Hell in a Cell that I think is one of the best Hell in a Cells ever. There are a lot of things that, we were in 2014, we were just three guys trying to get on TV, trying to get booked, and we were able to do something really great. Kofi becoming world champion, a guy who'd been deserving of that opportunity, I think, for many years. But, typically a guy like Kofi never gets that chance. He's always viewed, or typically viewed, as a guy who can go, and we all know he's good, but there's a ceiling to where he can go in pro wrestling. And I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to break through a lot of those glass ceilings.
Was there ever a moment where maybe someone in the locker room tempted you with like opportunity, like, hey, you can get further along if you dump Woods and Kofi?
Well, we often tell the story. Actually, it was not the opposite, but it was Kofi. I remember there was a conversation with Big Show in 2014 where Big Show saw where we were, and he pulled Kofi aside in front of me and Woods and said, "Woods, what are you doing with those? Sorry, Kofi, what are you doing with those two idiots?" Referring to me and Woods. He essentially said, not even joking around, but like, this is a sinking ship. You're better than this. You're world championship material. So I remember Kofi being the guy that people had, and rightfully so, a ton of respect for, a guy that Big Show clearly thought was better than being saddled with this group. I know that the three of us really just believed in ourselves as a unit, as a collective, and we decided that we're not going to let anyone sway us. We call those people wedge drivers, and it's something that we've done for a long time. And that's the one thing that I've loved, is that I really trust Kofi and Woods. There was never any point where I thought they were going to go behind my backs and pitch to break us up, or try to find a way to supplant themselves above the group. And one of the reasons I think we stayed so successful for so long is because there was never an attempt by any of the three of us to say, I'm the leader. I'm going to be above the two of you. Because I think what allowed us so much success is we have this revolving door of guys. Like, sometimes I realized there are times that I needed to step back because this was Woods' moment to shine, or this is Kofi's moment to shine. And same for me in matches or in programs or whatever it was. We all made sure that it became selfless, and it became selfish for us to be selfless. Like, we had to take a step back and let the others shine so the group could continue to grow, continue to stay interesting. And that's what we learned too, is there are times that it actually benefits me to kind of be in the back and not be in the spotlight right now, because I think just groups grow stale. They tend to grow stale so often when it's always about one guy and the other two are clearly just the minions or doing the dirty work. So that's one thing that I really loved, is the way we worked together, the way we trusted each other, really allowed us to grow for 6 years. There's no way if I decided, hey, I want to be the leader and I'm always doing things to put Kofi and Woods to the back, it wouldn't have worked and it would have fallen apart. So I've definitely learned a lot with the dynamic, and I'm glad that, you know, no one was able to come between us, and that was never a worry, honestly.
So this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, but let's say it's like 2035 and you're getting inducted as a group into the WWE Hall of Fame. You went through some of the moments you're most proud of earlier, but what are some of the moments that you hope are on that Hall of Fame sizzle reel?
Yeah, being a world champion is obviously number one. You know, that's always the goal. And I said this many years ago, like, if your goal isn't to be at the top in WWE, if it isn't to be world champion, then what are you doing here? And I often think of kind of one of the things I heard for many years when I played football was, you play for the name on your jersey. You don't just play for your first name, you play for your family. And that's how I perceive this run. Like, even though we're on different shows, we're still the New Day. And that's how I perceive it, is I am playing for the name on the back of my jersey. I don't clearly wear a jersey, but I'm still a member of the New Day. I still want to make them proud. I still want to add to our legacy as a group. And that's important for me. So I think being a world champion, I feel in like much the same way that Kobe was able to become world champion last year. It didn't detract from me and Woods. It only furthered the legacy of the New Day, of this group, and that's what I want to do. And you know, I feel like besides that, in wrestling, there's so many times where I might have had goals, but there are things like I never would have put hosting WrestleMania on my list of goals, because I never really, at the time, thought that was even a possibility. So there's so many things that I'm sure I'll be able to hopefully have the opportunity to do that I can't even fathom right now. But being a world champion, I think, is clearly up on that list. And it's been cool to get so much love from fans and from people who've been clamoring for that for quite some time from me.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about kind of world title aspirations. And so Roman Reigns is the champion right now on the SmackDown brand. Do you see yourself going right after him, or do you think that there's somebody kind of in between that you need to feel that you need to defeat as a singles competitor en route to deserving a title shot?
Well, I think, as far as, you know, I've seen far less deserving people than I get a world title opportunity for sure. But, you know, in the same vein, I have no problem kind of jumping through the hoops, overcoming those hurdles on the way there. And I think, too, from a fan perspective, I think when a title run really feels deserved, like our guy jumped through A, B, C, D, E, and now he's clearly showed he's ready, I feel like there's more investment. So I have no problem doing all those things either, because I really want, when I get that opportunity, I want it to feel deserved and earned. And I think the nice part with the draft is now we have some new faces. We have former world champions in Kevin Owens. We have really extremely talented guys like Aleister Black. We have another multi-time former world champion in Seth Rollins on our show now, a legend in Rey Mysterio. You have so many guys now that it would be a pleasure and an honor to be in the ring with. And yeah, so there's not, I wouldn't say there's anyone specifically that I'm eyeing. I've been Intercontinental Champion. Nothing wrong with being a two-time Intercontinental Champion as well, with Sammy holding that title. So there's a lot of opportunities, and I don't mind jumping through any of those hoops or having to overcome any of those hurdles en route to a world title opportunity.
How is the preparation for a singles match and generally a singles run different from that of competing as a tag team?
It's just different in the sense that it's not vastly different. I think one of the things that I often have to remind people is, like, all right, I get I was in a tag team for 6 years in a faction, but for the first 4, 5 years of my career, I was doing single stuff. I was your second ever NXT champion. I was an intercontinental champion. And I think a lot of times the rhetoric is that I have to learn how to do single stuff. And I get it's been a while, but to me, there's no real vast difference. You know, it's I never felt like I had to rely on others when I was in the tag team. Like I know what I'm doing. I felt like I was a strong contributor there, and I know my path that I want to traverse in singles. So there's no second guessing. There's no where it's not a difficult process for me as far as the way I approach things. I think the biggest difference for me is that I'm used to coming down the ramp and I have like kind of my safety blankets, my comforters just there, and Kofi and Woods, and I just love being able to see them there and feeding off that energy. And now I just have to manufacture some of the energy on my own. But it's something that I've been ready for. I know Woods, when he gets that opportunity, he'll be ready for it. Kofi's obviously shown he's ready for it. And I think that's kind of the beauty of the three of us is I always felt like the three of us could stand out on our own. And yeah, so that it's not a concern by any means.
I do have a couple more stable questions. So with you mentioned kind of the proverbial New Day jersey. You guys always kept your gear really fresh and really colorful and really reflective of your personalities in the group. What's the collaborative process like with designing the gear?
For us, we have extremely talented people who design and make our gear. Jonathan Davenport is the one who designs it, and he's incredible because we'll just come up with these harebrained ideas, and then we'll just throw them at him, and he'll come up with something beautiful. And Main Event Gear and Robert Adams, they actually make the gear, and they do incredible work as well. But for us, man, it's really just finding inspiration in what's around us. A lot of times the ideas come out of nowhere. I remember at the beginning of the year, for some reason, I thought we always do these really colorful designs. Why don't we do something like an empty coloring book? You think of like a blank coloring book. Hey, that's really different. It contrasts with what we've typically done, but it still feels New Day-esque. And then Kofi had the great idea to make it kind of this color by numbers or paint by numbers. And that's definitely top 3. That might be my favorite piece of gear we've ever had. So it's just stuff like that. Oftentimes they're just random ideas. Or I remember when Dunkaroos was announced, I remember thinking, man, we're all in our mid-30s, and the three of us. And it just brings back a lot of nostalgia. So I thought of like, hey, what if we lean on that nostalgia with Nickelodeon? So we have the Nickelodeon inspired gear right now. So it's just stuff like that where things on Twitter or in current events or in pop culture will often spark ideas. Sometimes they're just random ideas. And we just always want our gear to be fun and to reflect our personalities and our love for nonsense, I guess.
Speaking of the love for nonsense, where did the idea for Bootios come from, and how do you see that through from just like making it up to actually becoming a cereal to like a giant Bootios box with the entrance and so on?
Yeah, it all started with some fan. I can't remember the show. I can't remember what year it was, but man, I'd had to be 14 or 15. And I remember there was a fan at a show who had a sign with us on a Wheaties box. And we thought it was dope. And we talked about it, I think, a bit in the car. And I think we just kind of batted around the idea, like, what if we had a wrestling cereal we don't have? I always loved the idea of food products in wrestling, the ice cream bars we wanted to do for a while. And we just kind of batted that idea around. I don't remember exactly, but I remember Woods came to me and came to Kofi separately. And we had these separate conversations about what it would be called. And we both came up with Bootios. Because at the time, for some reason, it was funny to me that I remember as we were kids, if something sucked, we would say, that's booty or that's butt. I was like, let's bring that back. We like bringing back terms from our childhood because we're children. And so we both came up with the idea for Bootios. And then I can't remember exactly what happened, but we just started using it in promos and whatnot. And then our merch team came to us and they had this idea of, like, hey, what if we can actually like make a fake Bootios. I think the first idea was do the shirt. So we made the Bootios shirt. And then at WrestleMania, they sold it in these cereal boxes. It had no actual cereal in it. But that was actually the year in 2015 that we were #1 in merch. And that took off just incredibly. And then I think Triple H had the idea for us to come out of the giant cereal box. And then eventually we were able to get with one of our partners to actually make the cereal. So just having this random, it's just one fan had a sign, and everything kind of just went from there.
Interesting. So keeping on the food path, how did you find pancakes in every new city?
We thankfully at first we had someone in the kitchen. Actually, this man is named Cheese. We call him Cheese as his name. And we had him actually making our pancakes. And for a while, he has other responsibilities besides that. But then eventually we just had a runner who would go out to the store and just buy. The frozen pancakes actually travel much better because they're very disc-like. So we just ended up doing that.
Couldn't those maybe hurt somebody?
They could, and that's a risk you take at a wrestling show. Keep your head on a swivel. It's kind of like if you're at a baseball game, make sure you're paying attention, or if you're sitting courtside at a basketball game, same thing. So
but I mean, at a baseball game, you're expecting a baseball to be hard, and that could hurt. Like if you're getting a pancake thrown at you, you're expecting something soft. You're not expecting like a frozen disc brick.
Right, but you never know what to expect at a wrestling show, so it's just a lesson. Just pay attention. That's all. Just pay attention.
You mentioned your run as NXT champion earlier. What has it been like over the last 6-7 years to watch the growth of that brand become really something not just as like a developmental territory, but a really entity in and of itself?
It's incredible because I still think back to when we started NXT. And we didn't know what this was going to become. I still remember the days of the very first, actually, Woods and I like telling this story, not much of a story, but the very first match in that building was me versus Woods. We had a pilot that I believe never aired, but just kind of to get an idea of what the show would look like. But we shot this pilot, and we were the dark on the pilot. So you haven't seen the pilot, and obviously you don't see the dark match either, but we were the very first match in that building was me versus Woods in like a 3-minute match. And we just kind of, at the time, we knew that they wanted to transition FCW to NXT, and we were all kind of curious and unsure. And it felt like we were building something, but I never could have imagined that it would have made the leaps and bounds that it has now. When I was there, we were on Hulu, and it felt like it had a strong international presence. I know. We get tweets and stuff from people in Europe who watched the show and enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like that many people were watching domestically at first. And then to see the very first takeover, I think at the time, I was moved on by then, but then eventually to see the takeovers, I think Arrival, and then to see just the growth of the brand and the fact that they could pack these, 10, 15,000 seat arenas, and have such a rabid fan base is really cool. And man, I remember looking back in like 2014, 15, and just looking at the show and how many stars were there and how many people that I was just foaming at the mouth to work because they just had people just lost their minds for Enzo and Cass, and watching the Revival and all these absurdly talented tag teams, and seeing the growth of the women's division with the 4 horsewomen there was really special. So it was really cool to see the growth of NXT, something I never could have imagined.
So unlike the WWE video games, one of the cool parts is that you can have the current performers go up against the legends. Who is like a legend? Obviously, we can't create a time machine, but somebody you think that you could have just had an unreal program with?
Man, that's a great question. I guess I just always think back to my childhood favorites, and I guess he's a legend, but he's still around. He's still under contract. I always think anytime anyone asks me who my favorite wrestler is or who I want to have a program with, I always think of Goldberg, my man Goldberg. But Man, there's Goldberg. I had the pleasure for a couple weeks of just getting to kind of pick the brain of Vader. May rest in peace. When he was in FCW, he came down to help us train for a little bit, and he was incredible. I often think of like, you know, what I could do with a bigger guy. And a lot of these guys are, you know, a bit bigger than me, but I was like the fact that I can fly around a bit. So I think I'd have some fun with a Vader. Ron Simmons too, I loved as well. There's just so many guys. I grew up watching a lot of WCW, so those are the guys that I tend to think of. Is that like early to mid WCW, mid '90s WCW,
Where the big boys play.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I think of as the guys, you know, that I grew up watching that I love.
Yeah, so like Tenta as Shark, and like what Big Bossman was called Big Bubba in the mid '90s.
Yeah,
You got some good matches with them.
Right, no, for sure.
Is there anything that I did not ask you about that right now you are dying to discuss on this platform?
I don't know if I'm yearning to discuss anything that we have not touched upon. I don't know. The only thing I want to do is plug the stuff that I'm on. But that's why we don't need to. I'm on this show called Laser Wolf that I really enjoy, but it's an animated show and it's on Adult Swim. Actually, season 2 is coming on Adult Swim in November, and season 1 is on HBO Max. But it's a really cool, talented cast. Vince Staples, who's one of my favorite rappers, is on. Reginald Vell Johnson, the dad from Family Matters, is he voices a character on the show as well. Quinna Brunson. It's a lot of fun. So that's what I enjoy doing is voice work. I'm hoping to do more of that. But yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Thank you so much. Catch Big E on WWE Smackdown, and hopefully one day we'll look back on this interview and say that I interviewed a future WWE World Champion. Thank you again, Big E. We really appreciate it.